Welcome to the Gain Momentum podcast, focusing on timeless lessons from senior leaders in hospitality, travel, food service, and technology. I'm joined by our co-host today, Michael Cohen. How are you?
Hello, Adam. Good morning. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Our special guest today is Jim Rowe, Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Jonas Hospitality Property Systems. How are you, Jim?
I'm great, Adam. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. And we focus on timeless lessons, and we frame that around four key questions that we ask all hospitality technology professionals. So, Jim, the first question is, when it comes to scaling a business, what is the single piece of advice you would give entrepreneurs from your perspective as a professional in hospitality technology?
Great question. My biggest piece or single piece of advice I would give would be to know your product. Know where you fit in the industry. Don't try and be too much too soon. Really focus in on the audience that you can satisfy and serve well, and do that to the best of your ability.
Wow, that's one of the most concise answers we've ever had, Adam.
Yeah.
A multitude of these podcast sessions. So first of all, kudos. Second of all, like that just resonates so perfectly because usually in our industry, people think that they have to either boil the ocean, they have this incredible micro slice of innovation that's going to change the world. So it's usually either one extreme or the other. And to have that balance is really the art of commercialization of technology in general. I mean, Jim, what you just said really is applicable to almost every industry or vertical industry in regards to technology and innovation and rollout. So that's really well put.
So on my end, one recurring term that we have in hospitality technology or hospitality in general is fragmentation. And there's so many different vendors out there vying for the eyes and ears of buyers. And within your definition for what the answer you just gave for scaling a business, how would you define Jonas Hospitality within that?
In our perception, right? So I guess to take a step back, Jonas Hospitality or Jonas in general are an acquisition company. But where we differ from other acquisition or other acquirers in the industry is we buy and hold forever. Right. So we run a decentralized model, whereas we acquire a company, we keep that identity in place and we let whomever the GM or the president is exclusively continue running that business and satisfying and doing everything they can to satisfy their customer base. What we don't do is roll them up into one large organization where you sometimes then lose expertise within that business that we've acquired. Right. So in a sense, Jonas Hospitality has always been, or historically always been, as we've made a collection of best of breed solutions, which adds to the fragmentation that you just mentioned. We're changing that a little bit, and we can talk about that here in a little bit. But historically, that's what we've done. But because we are buy and hold forever, we look at things a little bit differently, right? From a scalability standpoint and things like that, we're not necessarily looking to just add bells and whistles because there's no exit strategy for us, right? So for us, we play the long game. We believe the tortoise wins the race, right? To where we're constantly looking at how do we create longevity within this product set and this solution set to make sure in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, our customers are still satisfied and still Jonas, still working with Jonas Hospitality Solutions.
So that's interesting. So, when people oversimplify, that's what people do, including myself, a roll up. You hear that a lot, Jim, right? Like one strategy is to roll up. We capture different categories or subcategories. And then you're right, there's an exit strategy or it's a P&E type driven thing or something like that. And not that we need to get in the weeds specifically on business corporate structures. I don't think that's what the audience is dying to listen to. But I think what you just said and what we know of our relationship with Jonas Hospitality as well is, I see the best of breed strategy. And the fact that, interestingly, it's worth the discussion, the decision to maintain autonomy in some respects, the decision to maintain leadership, which is really interesting, from a sales and marketing perspective, is a little different. To have the confidence and the vision to understand that keeping some level of the integrity of each unit or each silo or each bucket or however internally you discuss the various vendors in your portfolio. I think that's a fair statement. Portfolio is a word to use.
Yeah.
That's very different. And why do you think it works versus the roll up usually?
So we, as we acquire companies, we don't know your products, your customers, your solutions, your strategy better than whomever we're acquiring, right? They know that space, right? They've been serving it for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. Even if they're a startup, they've still been in that space for 2 to 3 years, whatever it is. And so we don't want to come in and disrupt that, right? We want to come in and enhance that. We want to come in and say, hey, here's some business metrics and some ratios that we use across all our portfolio to manage businesses. Here's some things that we would like you to work to attain, right? Because this is what creates longevity and makes a healthy business continue to run in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever that be. So we try to share best practices versus rolling up and suggesting we can do it better, if that makes sense. So we try and create an inclusive culture where people are encouraged to go out and make mistakes, right? Hey, go make that mistake, right? So we're all human. We all make them, right? I'll probably make 2 more this afternoon, right? So it's more of an inclusive culture where we share best practices and look to encourage people to continue satisfying the base that they serve. What I would say culturally, that's what makes it a little bit different as well. And that's certainly serves as well.
Well, one thing about the different strategies of roll-ups versus maintaining different entities that are best in breed solutions, it draws back to the dreaded I word in hotel technology, and that is integrations. We've come across this word before in previous podcasts, and it deserves mention here because of how you can maintain these separate entities, yet they all should have some synergy within them. So I'm wondering, how do you balance that process from a strategic level in terms of maintaining these best of breed solutions, but also having them work synergistically towards a bigger goal within Jonas Hospitality?
Right. Yeah. So again, I'm glad you brought that up because whilst I mentioned earlier, while historically that's the way we've done, where we're heading, right? And while we choose not to roll up operationally, we want to roll up from a technology standpoint, right? So what we'll see at High Tech this year and what we're pushing is Jonas Hospitality's unified platform, because we're releasing a CDP. And we've already got an integration platform. So everybody that is acquired or comes into the Jonas Hospitality portfolio is asked to connect to our platform, right? And then what we can then do, so everybody then has the same language and can connect to that. So from another vendor, if we work with another vendor, the benefit for another vendor is they only have to write to us once. They write to the platform and then they could connect to multiple of our solutions, right? Regardless, even though we're decentralized, the integration framework for them is the same. But then with us rolling out a CDP, what we're also going to do is connect everything to where now there's that single guest profile across all the solutions that we offer. And so it takes away those siloed, the siloed approach, and it also takes away some of the challenges that we've seen, as we all hear about, that sometimes the best of breed approach brings to the table, right? Which is integrations, right? So we feel like we're a little bit, we're not the only one, but we're uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between best of breed and all in one, right? Because you can buy multiple solutions from Jonas Hospitality, but we're still going to have that single mindset. There's still a GM focus on this PMS company or this spa company or this point of sale company, whatever it is, that's going to do everything they can to make sure you're fully satisfied with your business. And people, different hotel groups will buy different levels of solutions from them. Some may only buy one, some may buy two, some may still want other third parties that they've got relationships, and that's okay. We're not saying it's Jonas only in our world. We're saying, hey, if you want to use a third party for this, that works for us as well.
It's interesting because normally in the many, many podcast episodes that we've recorded and released, we rarely let the guests talk as much about their company as you just did.
Sorry.
No. I'm bringing it up for a reason, Jim.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because this is, normally this is not an advertisement. But the cool thing is why we're happy to have this discussion is from our perspective as industry advisors and former CEOs and SVPs, is we saw the difference in your organization, and we saw how it's an alternative, frankly, business structure, business model, strategy. And that's not just lip service because you're here and you're a guest. That's not because we're also partnering on a major event at High Tech for that's going to be the top evening event at High Tech, and that's wonderful. It's because intellectually and from execution wise, we saw a difference. We saw that this is I wouldn't say alternative. I'm not going to get that extreme, but it is a different path, right? And as you said, you're not the only one, but you're one of the organizations that have executed upon a strategy and vision that is a bit alternative than others. And I think we could leave it there and move on to the next question, Adam. But I think that's really why it's compelling.
Yeah. I think compelling is the right word. The other word I keep coming back to is flexibility as well. So Jim,
what I know about Jim, he's not so flexible. But anyway,
I can't even touch my toes. Yeah, I can't even touch my toes.
Oh, well, flexible in spirit. Let's say that. Jim, our second question. What are some of the common pitfalls or failures you have witnessed that business owners should look to avoid when scaling their business?
So interestingly, I guess I would go to the reverse of the first question that I answered, right? And I think that would be trying to do too much too soon, right? So the way, and again, full transparency, I'm not a founder of Jonas, right? So I didn't obviously start it and things like that. But, I've worked with multiple companies throughout my journey here, all at various levels, some a startup, some obviously a little bit further along in their path. And what some of the pitfalls we see, or I see specifically, is people trying to do too much too soon, right? And I think you mentioned it earlier, Michael, people wanting to be something for everything because that's what you want to go sell to the Pebble Beaches of the world, or whatever the the namesay is, or the Marriotts of the world. But really, your solution doesn't warrant that yet, right? And I think you shouldn't be in a hurry to get to that. Try and build confidence and competency in the areas where you are successful, right? Build those case studies, build that level of expertise, and then, incrementally every year or every quarter, whatever it is, you make the box a little bit bigger. And your addressable market that you serve, you make that a little bit bigger. You don't start and go too big too soon.
Interestingly, how I took what you just said was, it's not crawl, walk, run, but it's sort of like that, the trope, right? Crawl, walk, run.
Yep.
So it's really about establishing your presence. And that means a lot of different things, right? It could mean that you're establishing your reality as a business. You're validating your MVP that's moving to a commercial product. You're satisfying your investors' expectations initially, keeping it tight, getting to execution, meeting some KPIs. They could be smaller level KPIs initially, but they're still KPIs or execution targets or commercial targets. And then building, I almost, when I've been involved, and we've all been involved in this industry or in general for a long time, is it's almost like building up scar tissue in a positive way, learning how to succeed in one of the most difficult industries in the world called the hospitality industry.
Right.
And we all know this, and people watching are going to go, oh, here they go again. Well, it's true. The hotels are hard. It's complex. And Jim, you know this, and we all know this because we've been there. Someone lands a deal. It's X hotels, it's Y brand, it's Z ownership group. And yes, it's exciting, and we pop some bottles of wine and we have a nice steak, and then we go, holy, you know what? Now we have to execute.
Exactly.
And that's where for me, my take on what you just said was establish this kind of positive scar tissue of how to get it done, how to get it done commercially, how to get it done, obviously product development wise, how to get it done from a deployment perspective. So it's whatever that means, hardware, software, cloud-based, whatever, there's still levers to pull and plugs to plug in, and to make sure that it's deployed and supported well, and then you scale, and then you go layers of growth, right? Layers of growth on product and layers of growth on commercial, hiring more commercial people, having bigger marketing budget, but it's layers of expansion and growth. To me, that's in our industry for sure. I think that's the way it should be.
I agree. Yeah, it has to be a win-win, right? You have to look to enter into it. It can't just be a win for the salesperson, right? Then all of a sudden the client loses and the operations side of the business loses because they're trying to satisfy and service something that we probably shouldn't have sold, right? So it has to always be a win-win in mind.
The term that comes to mind is customer success. And I'm wondering if you could speak to any specific example that you've seen from a customer success standpoint where you've made that announcement, you've signed with a brand, with an ownership group, and then you have to now deliver. And what would you recommend to other companies to properly navigate that process?
I think I would just go back to the same as what I just said here is build slowly, establish your niche or whatever it is, right? And establish and then build methodically. You might have multiple solutions available to somebody, but don't try and go all in too soon, right? Let's understand the need that you're trying to solve, right? And understand, ask good questions. I mean, we all know about the consultative sale and things like that everybody talks about these days, but I still think that's tried and tested, right? You have to truly understand the need you're trying to solve, and you have to recognize what's most important at that point in time to the prospect or the customer, and then solve that. You can always, as you build credibility and you build relationships, you can always come back. If you do have more things, you can always come back and talk to them about that once you've solved that initial need. And I think sometimes, again, the reverse of that is the tendency of some people is to try and, hey, we have 5 things available. I want to talk to you about all these 5 things, but they truly only care about one. It's trying not to elevate your needs above the need of the client that you're trying to ultimately satisfy.
And the interesting thing, just to wrap up this question, is, people may think we're talking about startups or scale-ups here. Yes, we are. But we're talking about all
business
companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've worked for them. We've partnered with them. We've been clients of them. All of us. Even massive global companies. It's the same principles you're talking about, Jim. It's just bigger, more zeros at the end of the agreements, or maybe the financial statements, more touches, more regional, more global. But it's the same scenario. It's so tempting, maybe, to almost confuse the client partner, or maybe it's a distribution partner, or whatever the transactional partner is, because you have them now. They're interested in A, let's slam B, C, and G, and maybe we'll tell them about Z that's coming out in 2 years, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's, I've been there, by the way. I mean, as a younger executive, and we're all exuberant, I'm sitting in front of a major global brand, one of the top 7 in their headquarters. And, you start to roll, right? And you can see, and I learned, hopefully it was great. It was early personally, but we've all done this. And everyone who's been in the commercial side watching this has done it too, where we start seeing the clients eyes glass over and they start looking at their phone, or they're looking somewhere because we've lost the room.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah. You prioritized your own agenda over theirs. Right. And it is extremely tempting. And you absolutely see that people early on in their careers. Right. And hopefully they learn from that and recognize that's not the best practice.
But mentioning here, Michael, you did say, you're looking ahead, applying X solution now, Y solution in 6 months, Z solution maybe next year or 2 years, which is the perfect segue to our third question, which is all about the future. So, Jim, what do you see as the key opportunities and challenges for hotel technology companies in 2024 and beyond?
Well, given Michael's comment earlier, I'm not going to plug Jonas at this moment in time, right? We're going to keep this high level and we're going to keep this generic here, right? And I think, it's an ever-changing landscape, right? And I don't know if I actually have the true answer to this, because nobody can confidently say the impact AI is going to have on our industry at this moment in time. But I think it's going to be an interesting journey these next 5 years, right? That all of us need to keep our ears to the ground and be proactive and reactive to the needs of how we can work more efficiently for our guests or our customers, and how we can help them advance their businesses by perhaps using technologies that don't currently either aren't mainstream today. So I think it'll be interesting. And I think from an entrepreneur standpoint, I think over the next 3 to 5 years at High Tech and others, as we go into these shows, there's going to be a lot of cool vendors and cool products and cool solutions enter the market that we haven't seen over the last 10 years, let's say. I'm looking forward to it as much as everybody else is, right? So,
well, it's interesting, Jim, because, positive guy, commercial guy, that's who you are. So you're positively looking forward to it. And we all know, and there's no criticism here, it's just a human reality. Many people have trepidation of what's happening in our industry in the next 5 years.
That's true.
And from our perspective and working with folks like you and others in the industry and so on and clients, because we have an AI for hospitality practice, like we're brought in for vendors, we're brought in for brands, et cetera. And why we're having impact, frankly, is because it's the navigation and the prioritization is the first two things. And the third thing is it's everyone take a breath. Like actually being able to be a third-party expert and be able to walk into a boardroom or a virtual meeting with senior executives of a partner firm or a VC or whatever it is, hotel brand, of course, travel brand, and kind of being able to, in a politely non-patronizing way, say, let's all take a breath. This is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
So when people say two ways to Adam's question, I mean, Jim, some people are saying, overkill. It's like, to me, it sounds like the metaverse or something. I think, okay,
Right.
everyone can have their opinion, and that's important. We have to respect that. But, it's clear, it's obvious, maybe to most, that this is, PCs, the internet, mobile, AI, 4 massive paradigm shifts over the last 50 years that have changed everything.
Yeah.
The entrepreneurs that we're talking about now in travel and hospitality, in the MICE industry or any other industry, the ability for this conversation to even happen, how it's happening so efficiently from a cost perspective and a value perspective, the technology we're using, the ability to start a business and in 3 to 5 years have something that's really substantial with a global presence that didn't happen 20 years ago. Just didn't.
Right.
It was so difficult. So AI for all of us and our client base, commercial base, management base, investor base, I think it's interesting for us, people on our side of this together, is we need to make sure that we highlight the potential without minimizing the damage, because there is going to be some damage. And specifically for folks in our industry on the hospitality innovation side, to use something like AI, which is a wide term, to produce tools, to enhance tools or expand tools and systems and technology to ensure that our client base and the investors who invest into these companies, that they maximize the opportunity of what's next. To me, to people like us, maximizing the opportunity of what's next. That's all of our jobs as stewards in some ways to make sure that that happens. And, this whole thing of that AI is going to focus people on and their bandwidth on the most profitable, high margin sides of whatever business they're in. That is the core principle of AI, in my opinion, and I believe yours too, Jim and Adam. And our collective industry's job is to make sure that we're providing opportunities and laneways to actually successfully execute on that.
Agreed.
That's my speech. Yeah.
And it was a good one, Michael.
Thank you.
Well, I have another sort of speech, and then it'll get into a question. But Michael mentioned a word that I think is very important for people to remember, and that is being stewards. And it harkens back to something that I don't personally remember in my lifetime, but to give you perspective, when the modern hotel industry first really got onboarded in the 1920s, 100 years ago, we used to have elevator operators, somebody to push the buttons on the elevator. And then eventually that gave way as people got familiar with how to push the buttons on their own. But it's not like one day the GM said, "Oh, you're an elevator operator, you're gone." No, they didn't do that. They gave them another job at the hotel doing something else.
Right.
And they were stewarding those people to keep them in the family. And now it behooves hospitality technology companies to steward their clients, the hotels, with new AI products and using those, like how to best to use something like a Copilot feature, So my question therein with that as a premise is, how do you see hospitality technology companies properly stewarding their clients on a one-to-one basis to start onboarding these new next generation AI tools?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that, Adam, honestly, because it's like I said, there's multiple ways this could go, right? And I think we're just at the very start of this. But I'm hopeful, like you are, like I said, that this is just going. The initial releases of solutions like this are going to be create more efficiency and enhancements in a guest journey or in a guest experience within the hotel. And that's where I would look for hotels and encourage hotels and hoteliers to look at solutions that are doing that, because ultimately that's what everybody cares about, right? Is how do I have an improved experience during my stay within a hotel? And I think the companies that are out there, that are bringing new technology, be it AI or whatever it is, that's going to help enhance that experience, are the ones that are going to be the most successful. Where it goes from there, I think, you know what I mean? I think, like I said, we're all curious, and we'll find out here in the next 3-5 years. But we could do this show again in 3 years, 5 years, and we might all go, didn't see that coming, right? Maybe something's gone a different way, right? And we might have virtual people checking us in or something. Who knows, right?
Well, actually, Jim, we will be having that because we've already worked with clients and companies, and they're mostly startups who have holographic.
Exactly. I saw them. Yeah. And it's exciting, but that's the scarier side of AI to me, right? You know what I mean? And so, but I get it can also create efficiencies as well, because some I've seen where there are people there, but they're just able to scale themselves.
Correct.
And you guys you've probably seen more of this than what we do on our, certainly from a Jonas perspective, because you're working with multiple different entrepreneurs, right? And so I guess, Mike, I shouldn't ask a question on your podcast, but what excites you guys the most from what you've been seeing?
Actually, that's awesome. And Jim, you're going to be invited back because you're hitting all the right check boxes.
Yeah.
For me personally, and as a professional, I guess, industry, anything that oils the machine, that creates seamlessness, that takes some of the sandpaper out of either travel or guest experience, back of the house stuff as well. Anything that oils the machine. So, for example, some people, it's controversial, but I don't see it as that much controversy myself, is the facial recognition technology that's being deployed in many, many choke points in the travel experience, hospitality experience. So to me, that is, and there's a lot of technologies that incorporate, facial recognition and integration with passport systems or loyalty systems at hotels, or
right.
I mean, it's, the cameras, the IoT, the power of the Wi-Fi. As you know, it's a honeycomb of technology. A lot of it is old school technology, last 10 years, that is creating the platform for the new school. Right. So for me, one of the ones is facial recognition and the ability to streamline and smooth the travel transaction, if you know what I'm getting at. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Well, to draw on your point about oiling the machine, I'd say that is the core of everything, because the more you can increase team productivity and liberate your team's time, because we all know that labor is the ceiling here in terms of not availability. So what I then would go for is, what are you oiling towards? So you oil the machine, and where is that engine moving towards? What's the big why for a hotel? And my big why, my personal big why, is wellness. And I bring that up because so much of wellness is not just going off and having a spa with people there and going to a mineral bath, but how you can use the data that's within your systems to then personalize and improve somebody's health while traveling. Everyone's traveling for whatever reason. They're visiting a client, they're getting away with the family, etc. But there's so many little tiny ways that you could increase and improve somebody's stay from a well-being or physical wellness point of view if you just had a little bit more time from your housekeepers and front desk people, or just a little bit more personalization to know that they were lactose intolerant, or they didn't drink alcohol and would really prefer a great coffee experience down in the cafe. So, but all that depends on the oiling of the machine, and also having that North Star of knowing that you want to improve somebody's health while traveling.
And to that point, Adam, it's interesting, and we're going to wrap up this point here overall, but we're working with a new client in the sleep technology space. I mean, Jim, 15 years ago, if you and I were having a scotch somewhere at a conference, we'd be talking about sleep technology for hospitality. But now I just said it to you, and you're going, I imagine, that's a value-added technology
Absolutely.
implementation, because obviously in the travel and hotel hospitality experience, sleep quality, providing a better sleep quality than your competitors, whatever, is a differentiator, right? So the company's called Waiver Labs. They're great. But 6 months, even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have contemplated that as being part of our conversation. So that's some answers to your questions. Great interviewer, Jim. You're doing well.
I flipped it on you guys.
Yeah. I guess it's that's part of the job of a sales and marketing person is, you're trying to, find out what our big issue is, our top priority to sell to us, right?
Whoever asks the last question controls the conversation, right? So
yeah.
I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. Jim, we're going to move into our fourth and final question, which is, what are the key things innovative leaders and entrepreneurs should prioritize and focus on to gain traction for their business?
So I feel like I'm kind of hitting on a theme here. But again, for me, my recommendations would be to carve out your niche. There's nothing better from a sales perspective. The favorite lead any salesperson's ever going to receive is a warm referral. From a happy client that's passed along, hey, you've got to speak to these people, right? I've been using them now for 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. You need to speak to these people. And again, for us, from my experience, that still starts off understanding your target audience, understanding your product, understanding where you play strong. Don't try and spread yourself too thin too soon, and really have that niche and focus on that market, and then grow from there. And like I said, really satisfy that base extremely well, to where they are your champions and they're singing from the rooftops for you, and they're doing your marketing for you in a sense, right? And because that's, like I said, as a salesperson, my favorite lead ever is that warm referral.
Yeah, and it's an age-old theme. It comes up many times in these podcast sessions with the Game Momentum podcast. Business is about people, and our industry, travel and hospitality, and MICE industry globally, is even more about people, because literally it's about people on the consumer side, the passenger side, the patron side, and then it's definitely about people in regards to the staff, operations, engineering, commercial side. I'm talking about other brands or the entities. And then, of course, many of us in the industry are facilitators between those two constituencies in many ways, right? The technology and innovation that we're all involved in really is about facilitating that dialogue and keeping it efficient, keeping it profitable, keeping it innovative, effective, all those things. But it's really a dialogue. So I like how you kind of wrapped up your whole theme, because the theme is about keeping it focused, being smart about growth, focusing on the customer or partner or the end user, which are things that we can all say and we know to say them, but to actually do them or execute upon them is actually where the superstars to the middling executives, that's the delineation, is who can actually take these principles, their team or their board of directors or the senior or the C-suite, and actually successfully build businesses for themselves and also, of course, for their clients, by living and executing and being consistent on those principles. So yeah, I love that answer, and I love the reality of tough industry, but this is about people.
People buy from people they like and people they trust, and I don't think no matter what innovation comes out, what AI comes out, that's not going away, right? That's not changing. And and I tell our teams all the time, just because somebody's in the market for a new solution doesn't mean to say we should participate, right? Because if we're not a fit, we would rather walk away rather than, like we talked about earlier, trying to force your agenda ahead of theirs just to get a win that ultimately ends up taking your business or your operation backwards, because you now can't effectively satisfy that client that you just tried to onboard. And it does take a certain discipline to do that. But people that get that right tend to build longevity and keep that everything moving towards the right.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to finish off talking about the discipline required to find and focus on your niche. And we could spend a whole 2 hours just drilling down to specifics within that and getting into some examples. But Jim, I can't thank you enough for those words of wisdom and for coming onto the show.
No, thanks for having me, Adam. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, and I just want to say also thank you for being a corporate partner of our VIP event in Charlotte at the stadium on the Tuesday evening. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to a lot of success at High Tech for you in general and for us overall.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited about that event as well and look forward to meeting you guys in person. Yeah, and sharing some more battle scars with each other, right? So
Great. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, gents.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.